The lobby of Gray Industries was built to impress. Marble floors, soaring ceilings, and glass walls that reflected the city skyline. Every employee who worked there knew the golden rule: don't waste the CEO's time. Alexander Gray stepped out of his car and into the building, his polished shoes echoing like a metronome of authority. Tall, broad-shouldered, and impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, he exuded the kind of power that made people drop their gaze. His jaw was set in its usual hard line. He never smiled, not in meetings, not in photographs, not even in private. The elevator doors slid open. People waiting nearby instinctively stepped back, letting him in alone. No one dared to intrude on his space. But just before the doors could close, a tiny hand shot out and pressed the button. A little girl, 6, maybe 7, darted inside, her shoes scuffing against the floor. She wore a sunny yellow dress that looked slightly too small, her hair tied into pigtails that bounced as she moved. In one arm she carried a fraying doll, its button eye hanging loose. Alexander's sharp blue eyes narrowed slightly, more out of surprise than irritation. No one had dared share an elevator with him in years. The girl didn't seem the least bit intimidated. She stood right beside him, staring up with unabashed curiosity. And then, without hesitation, she reached out and slipped her tiny fingers into his hand. Alexander stiffened instantly, unused to such closeness. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice low and commanding. The girl tilted her head, her pigtails swaying. "Mommy needs a smile," she said softly, as though explaining something obvious. Her eyes sparkled with childlike certainty. "Do you have one you can share?" For the first time in years, Alexander felt caught off guard. Something tugged in his chest, a forgotten ache he couldn't quite name. The elevator hummed as it ascended, its numbers glowing with each passing floor. Alexander stared at the little hand wrapped around his own. It was warm, fragile, and entirely trusting. He cleared his throat, trying to regain composure. "Where's your mother? Does she know you're wandering around like this?" The girl hugged her doll tightly. "She's downstairs." She was nervous. She said she's going to meet the man in the tall office about a job. She looked up at him again, wide-eyed. "That's you, isn't it?" Alexander blinked, momentarily speechless. Employees pitched proposals to him every day, but never had a child spoken his title like it was a fairy tale. "And why?" he asked carefully. "Do you think your mother needs a smile?" The girl wrinkled her nose in thought. "Because when Mommy gets sad, she forgets she's strong. But if someone smiles at her, she remembers. Smiles are like magic spells." She leaned closer and whispered as if sharing a secret. "I think you need one too." Alexander's throat tightened. He looked away, watching the numbers climb. No one had spoken to him that way in years. Not with honesty, not with innocence. He had built a world of walls and contracts, of silence and steel. Yet here was a child, dismantling it with nothing more than a doll, a soft hand, and a few simple words. For the first time in longer than he could remember, Alexander Gray wondered if a smile really could change something. The elevator chimed and the polished doors slid open onto the lobby. The little girl skipped out, still holding Alexander Gray's hand as though it belonged to her. He, Alexander Gray, the billionaire who terrified boardrooms, found himself following like a man under a spell. Across the room, a woman sat stiffly on the edge of a chair, clutching a worn folder to her chest. Her black hair was pulled into a neat bun, but strands had slipped loose, framing a face lined with exhaustion. Her shoes were scuffed, her dress simple but clean. She looked up anxiously every time the lobby door opened, as though bracing for bad news. When she saw her daughter, tugging the CEO along, her heart nearly stopped. "Lila," she gasped, rushing forward. "What are you doing?" She dropped to her knees, pulling the child close. "I told you to wait, sweetheart. You can't just—" But Lila beamed, oblivious to her mother's panic. "It's okay, Mommy. I found him. I told him you needed a smile." The woman's face drained of color as she slowly looked up. right into the cool blue eyes of Alexander Gray. Her breath caught in her throat. "Mr. Gray, please forgive her. She didn't mean to bother you. But Alexander lifted a hand, silencing her apology. His gaze lingered on the little girl still clinging to his fingers, then shifted to the weary mother with the folder pressed to her chest. "For the record," he said quietly, "she wasn't a bother. She was a reminder." The woman blinked, confused. She had expected irritation, dismissal, maybe even security escorting them out. But instead, she saw something she never imagined on Alexander Gray's face: softness. And then, unbelievably, a smile. He crouched down so that he was eye level with Lila again. "Your mother's lucky to have such a brave little messenger," he said. Then he turned his attention fully to the woman. "And I think we should continue this interview. Not with your resume, but with a conversation." Tears welled in the woman's eyes as she whispered, Are you serious?" Alexander nodded, his smile deepening just slightly. "Your daughter told me you needed a smile. She was right. But I think what you both need is more than that, a chance, and I intend to give it." The lobby had fallen silent, employees pretending not to stare, but everyone watching. As mother and daughter clung to each other, Alexander felt something stir in him he had long buried. The understanding that business was not just about numbers and steel towers. It was about people, about lifting them when no one else would. And, as he stood there with a child's hand still wrapped around his, Alexander Gray realized that a single touch and a single plea for a smile had changed everything.